The essential mango coconut freeze. It makes its appearance at the dinner party, right when the night could go either way between nice evening and legendary. Served in 8 perfect stoneware bowls to the sounds of circa 1950 bossa nova. Seconds, a good debate, and an impromptu round of never have I ever follow. It's gonna be a late one. The essential evening extender, made possible with Vitamix.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Archaeology Show. TAS goes behind the headlines to bring you the real stories about archaeology and the history around us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeology Show, episode 302.
On today's show, we talk about the history of and our visit to Stonehenge.
Let's dig a little deeper and hopefully end up with a 5-star review. Welcome to the Archaeology Show.
Hello.
We're sorry, Canada.
No.
You're not as flat as you look.
We so have to start with an apology. This is so dumb. Do you know why I am so mad at us over this? I think you know why.
Because we went through the mountains of Canada?
We have been to Banff. So for those who
Listen,
know
Banff is on the edge.
For those who know Canadian geography about as well as we do, it turns out there are tons of mountains in Alberta. They're just on the west side of the province.
True.
Don't qualify it. It's fine. We got it wrong.
I'm still going to say that if you're going to put a percentage on Alberta and say, what is most of Alberta, flat or mountainous?
Well, I think it's kind of hilly in the other parts. Anyway, okay. You know what? We're not geographists. If that's Geographers. And we apologize to the entire country of Canada for being lame Americans who don't know anything
or at least
than their own country.
Or at least to the 48 people that sent us emails and pictures of mountains in Canada.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, Wendy, and whoever the other ones were.
There was a few others.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for emailing us, though, because that was super dumb. And we definitely want to have our facts straight. And we didn't on that one because we were talking off the cuff.
Well, Again, I think I was speaking in general terms. We know that the western province of Alberta, the western side, does have, skirt up against the mountains there, of course.
Yeah, of course. The Rockies kind of, the boundary between British Columbia and Alberta is broken up by the Rockies.
But you get up into, to Calgary and you start getting into the plains there. I mean, it is a plains environment.
It is flatter down there, for sure. Because Calgary was, I don't remember. You know what? Anyway. I'm not going to just start talking about Canadian geography that I clearly know nothing about. So.
I'm just doing it because I want more pictures emailed to us because they were beautiful. Well, another thing that's beautiful is Stonehenge.
It is
which
indeed.
we're talking about today.
I know. I would go out on a limb and say of all of our experiences in England, this is like maybe number one or number two.
It would probably be number one only because if you asked anybody to name one thing they know about England besides, the monarchy, the king and queen, something like that, it would probably be Stonehenge. Or what's the most recognizable archaeological landmark they know in the entire planet? Yeah. If they don't say the pyramids first, they're probably going to say Stonehenge either first or second.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's just something that you need to see.
It is. It's one of I don't know if it's officially one of the wonders of the world, but for me, it's definitely one of the wonders of the world. Yeah. Because it's just amazing. So what we thought we would do for this episode is just give a crash course in Stonehenge.
Yeah.
How old it is, who built it, when, where, why, how, what we do and don't know of it. Right. This is by no means going to be exhaustive. It's kind of just your quick overview. So you know what we were going into it when we went there, because we just have the quick overview in our heads,
Yeah.
And then what it was like experiencing it. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So it's located on the Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, England, which is about 8 miles north of Salisbury. And we're going to talk about our visit there in segment 2. Yeah. And driving there and the visit there and the whole thing. So we'll get into that a little bit.
All the logistics of it too and all that. Yeah.
It's literally just on rolling hills in the English countryside in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, it's some of my favorites.
Literally no mountains.
Yeah, no mountains. Lots of hills, though. Really beautiful country. Honestly, I enjoy driving through it so much, which we'll talk more about in the next segment, I'm sure, because that was an experience too. But anyway, I mean, it's been there for, many thousands of years. And obviously it wasn't built overnight.
Right.
It was used by many groups of people over a millennium, right? Like multiple thousands of years. I'm smart. I promise I am. I'm not coming off that way today, though, man. Okay.
Yes, the geographists would agree.
Oh, God. Why am I like this? Okay. Anyway. Yeah. And also haven't been drinking. I have no excuses right now.
She has been shooting sourdough discard all morning, though, just like snorting it over there.
I made biscuits. They were amazing. Yeah. If you are a sourdough baker, make some sourdough discard biscuits. They're delicious.
This just became the sourdough podcast without it's even. It's not. It used to be, I would just talk about, I would mention something tangential to like knitting and spark an entire discussion. Now it's sourdough.
My hands like literally still smell like butter.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, so
timeline.
Yeah, timeline. So we're talking about 3000 BCE over here as far as sort of a starting point for Stonehenge,
yes,
give or take.
Yeah.
Which is 5,000 plus years ago if you're doing the math.
So long ago.
Now that's just the start of it.
Yes.
Right? That's when they bought the land, they got the permits, and they said, let's start building.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, this is England, so it took them a long time before they could actually start building. Right. So
had to get the permits.
The council was like,
So we've kind of broken this out into 3 different phases. I'm sure there's like 1As and Bs and Cs and like various different like mini phases within there, but we're going to talk about it in 3 large chunks,
really
right?
broad phases here.
Yeah. So around 3000 BCE, we've got an early henge enclosure, which is a circular ditch and bank with timber posts. And at that time, too, there's also evidence of cremated burials.
Right.
So no big stones just yet, but the ditch, which is very important to Stonehenge, is there. And the timber posts. And we'll talk about this in our experience, but wood henges nearby, too. And henges, I think a lot of people don't realize, but henges are common.
Henge is just kind of a word for...
It's just a circle
fence,
of stuff, right?
Sort of fence or barrier or enclosure.
Yeah.
That's what a henge is.
Yeah. And you get stone henges, you get wood henges. There might be other types of henges. Well, isn't there like car henge somewhere here in the States? Like modern ones?
You could go out to breakfast right now after listening to this podcast and make a sausage henge on your plate. I mean, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
You could make a henge out of anything.
Yeah. So that's just...
Henge it up.
Anyway, didn't we go to one in Georgia too? There was a henge there. What was that one?
Oh, that was okay. So that's the Georgia Guidestones.
Oh, okay.
Very different.
That's a pseudo. That's getting into pseudo land.
That's not archaeology. It's not pseudo anything.
Oh,
listen. That Georgia Guidestones is a completely different discussion.
Oh, it is,
and it's going to be archaeology. Actually, somebody blew it up recently, if I'm not mistaken, because they were worried about it.
I think so. Yeah.
So it's not going to be archaeology. Yeah. Look up the Georgia Guidestones if you want to hear something super interesting.
Yeah. Sorry. Shouldn't have tangented to someplace that you weren't ready to talk about.
Well, no, it's just not archaeology because it was built like 20, 30, 40 years ago or something.
Okay,
but
yeah.
If you want to hear something interesting, look up the Georgia Guidestones. And I've been there, and you're thinking Stonehenge because they had a Stonehenge-esque feel to them.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, but anyway.
That kind of monumental architecture has been something that people have done for obviously thousands of years. Yeah. And they do it with many different materials, not just stone. So that's kind of all I was trying to say. And the earlier ones do tend to be things like timber and wooden posts because they're just easier to move and easier to manipulate. Although still quite heavy when you get big ones, but still, yeah.
So phase 2, starting around 2500 BCE, give or take, shows the arrival of the bluestones, which are not blue.
They're not blue.
They're just called that.
Yes.
They're smaller stones transported from the Preseli Hills in Wales, which is over 150 miles away. Which actually is closer than I kind of thought it was.
Wales is, it's a little closer.
So a long ways, and you're hauling these stones, which are still gigantic.
Yes, yeah, like many tons of stone that they have to get 150 miles. That's a long distance to travel.
It's a long distance.
Yeah, and what I love about this is, we talked about this a couple of years ago on the show, I think, but the figuring out that the stones are from Wales is a relatively new piece of information, I think. And they're getting the origins of these rocks, these stones in Stonehenge. They're slowly getting filling in those pieces over time, and it's helping them figure out where they came from, why they're there, because there's a lot of question marks around Stonehenge still. So anyway, on to phase 3. Yeah,
phase 3 goes from roughly 2500 to 1600 BCE. We're still BCE time frame here, and you get to the iconic sarsen stones, and those are the huge, tall sandstone blocks, likely locally sourced. And these were carefully shaped and erected in the central horseshoe and outer circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what you know is Stonehenge when you see it from a distance.
Yeah. The super big ones. And I think I did read like maybe because we got the little like Stonehenge book that you can buy to go along with it. And I think I did read that even though they're technically locally sourced, they're still from like 15 or 20 miles away.
Yeah,
like
that's local.
Yeah, that's local.
Yeah.
So you're still moving these stones, which are, 20 feet tall or whatever. You're moving them across that many miles. It's just insane, right?
Yeah, we still don't really know what was so important about this spot. Why move all these stones
to this
in various time frames? And not only that, but vastly different people that really didn't know anything about each other across thousands of years.
Yeah,
really building this spot up.
There are some newer theories about that, but we'll get to that in the third segment.
Yeah, the bluestones though, back to those.
Yeah,
why Wales? That's one of the big questions. Why did they bring those from there? Why the Welsh? There were Welsh people back then, but why maybe even the influence of the people that were from that area that knew about Stonehenge? Why did they bring those stones from there specifically? Did they have some sort of spiritual significance and they wanted to just build up Stonehenge with those stones specifically for some reason?
Right.
Who knows, right? So, yeah, it's hard to say why. There's a lot of newer research coming out, but let's talk about some of the other stones first, because then we have the sarsen stones. And like we said before, that give it its classic look.
It's also classy.
That's also classy.
Stay classy.
Yeah. Now, these stones were shaped using, probably some sort of stone hammers and other shaping implements that they had at the time. Fitted together with a mortise and tenon style joint, because on at least one of them, you can see the knob where the top stone would have been just pegged right on top
Lego,
of it.
Right? I
the first Legos probably.
Yes. When we saw that, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
They literally like go together like a puzzle that fits together. It was just so cool to see that little piece of architecture. And for me, I love seeing the how of something is done because it just makes it feel more real, because otherwise it's just so big and you don't understand how they could have done that at all. So when you can see that little piece of it, that's my favorite bit.
Yeah. And the other cool thing is the lintels or the horizontal stones that go on top of those were shaped to be curved, because the original circle or partial circle around, I mean, it really isn't a circle. So they would place the sarsen stones around in a circle. Those aren't necessarily curved, but they were kind of, they were hammered in that way.
Yeah.
But the lintels had to be in order to get that shape. And you can really see it.
Yeah.
I mean, they were carved that way.
Yeah. The ones that are still connected, you can see that circular shape to them. It's really cool.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious when you're there.
Yeah.
So
then there's the ultrastone, and this was really cool. And we talked about this last August, I think, when it first came out, but they've recently discovered the origin was not local. And instead it almost certainly came from the Orcadian Basin in northeast Scotland. Scotland is way further away than Wales.
It's a little far away.
That means that it had to have traveled at least 465 miles to get to Stonehenge.
Yeah.
465.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
It's a little far.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is relatively new information, and more stuff is coming out all the time about the origins of these different stones. And we talked about the ultrastone in particular in episode 275. So you can go listen to that for more information. But when I was adding these notes to our little thing here that we use to do the podcast, I found a different article, which is really cool. It's linked in the show notes, but there's kind of maybe a newer theory, or maybe it's an older theory and they just are getting more evidence for it. But this hypothesis that Stonehenge was an effort to bring together like far-flung communities from across the British Islands, and those people bringing their most magnificent examples of stone or rock from their area. And that's why you get this mix of different rocks making up the bigger Stonehenge shape. That's a cool theory, right?
It is an interesting theory, but if you just say that sentence and then stop, you might think it was a coordinated effort, but you're talking about thousands of years.
You are. Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't happen one time, and it wasn't like somebody left a note and somebody picked it up 1,000 years later and said, oh, we got some cool rocks. Let's bring these over.
That's true. So how were these people communicating that the thing to do was to bring like a really cool gigantic rock with you? I don't know.
That's why it seems more likely to me that, and I think it probably speaks to that, is that for some reason that is unbeknownst to us because we're so divorced from it and we just don't have the ability to see it, is that this did hold some sort of significance. I mean, we'll get to how it does hold significance for people that we just can't understand when we talk about it in segment 2. But, you know, when you're there, it holds this power over some people, and they must have had this just feeling that I've just like overcome. And man, I get this same feeling here in my own homeland, and I need to bring this connection. I need to bring these things here, you know, because what was there was clearly brought there and not quarried there. Right. So I need to go quarry in my own homeland and add to this structure, you know? So some other theories as to what this could be for, just because of certain structural alignments, is astronomy. So when you look at Stonehenge, there's an alignment of certain stones, and with the solstices and equinoxes, solstices are in June and December, and the equinoxes are in March and September. They suggest a possible connection to tracking the sun and the moon, marking seasons, and potentially for calendrical purposes, right? Now, people always say, well, you know, sure, they did this to help them understand when the seasons were, but plenty of cultures didn't have to know when the seasons were. I mean, maybe in England, when it's just like always cloudy and always kind of the same temperature, you're like, what the hell time of year is it? I need to know when to plant my crops.
Right.
Sure, something that's guided by the sun is probably not going to help you with that because there's no sun in England.
Right.
Although there was the whole month we were there.
The whole time we were there.
The whole time we were there.
The whole time.
Anyway, the point is, maybe that's the case, or maybe that is just part of the spiritual significance of this, is the partial worship of the sun and the moon, and having something aligned to that, because it's like connecting you to the heavens, right? You're building this connection between the earth, yourself, the thing you built, and the you know, and the heavens. These cultures around the planet have done this all the time. Yeah, true. Because it's this one little thing they can do to say, you know, look what we've done. Look at this connection we've made. Yeah. You know, and if some even religious leader did it, they could be like, you know, almost deify themselves by doing that. Yeah. Yeah, so, totally. I mean, that's kind of what the Egyptian pharaohs were going for too, with the Maya, the Aztecs. A lot of people have done that. Yeah. You see it around the world. So it's definitely a possibility. Another one I love is the ritual. We need to put the ambitral sound that they made. It's so funny. I'll just do ritual. So there are burials all around Stonehenge, and it's just famous rich people wanting to be buried next to it. Come on. But and it totally could be. Some of them are earlier, some are later, some are right smack in the middle of the time that they were building and using Stonehenge. But I mean, it does bring up the possibility that it was maybe a potential sacrificial site or a place to do sacrifices. Maybe. Yep. And also there could be like ancestor worship, other rituals that were important to the culture. Who knows? But that's what it could have been used for, is some kind of ritual significance. Yeah. They talk about other stuff too, like having healing properties. Like people say the bluestones have healing properties, and people say that still today. They do. They talk about it being a meeting place or a social hub, which kind of gets back to almost one of the things you were talking about. Yeah. People came together. Just as a gathering location, right, for surrounding communities and social, political, religious events. Over thousands and thousands of years, it more than likely lost and gained significance so many times as, you know, different cultures, tribes. And I mean, this area was dominated, conquered, and changed hands, and just different groups, different religions and cultures and things came in so many different times. It's like, who even knows what the original ideas were, and different cultures would have had to place their own significance on it. Yeah, for sure. It's quite unlikely that whatever original intent there was, even at the different phases of building, that original intent survived through time. Right. So it just doesn't seem likely. So yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's talk about our experience in actually going and visiting and standing inside the circle. Which we actually got to do. Which you don't always get to do. No. It's a special ticket you got to buy. Tips and tricks. Here they come. Back in a minute. Welcome back to episode 302, all about Stonehenge. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about our visit to Stonehenge. So as we've discussed, we spent about 3.5 weeks or so in England. And during we actually kind of passed to the north of Stonehenge when we went from London out to the Cotswolds, where we spent 10 days. Yeah. We had a whole weekend where we did some other stuff. And one of those days, we decided to drive down to Stonehenge. Now, I'll talk about the drive, but you talk about the tickets that we got first.
So there are a couple types of tickets you can get for Stonehenge. There's just your basic entry ticket, and I'm looking at the prices right now, and there's various different options, but depending on whether you're a member or you donate or blah, 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 you're looking at like 22 to 27 pounds, right, to get in, which add about 20-30% right now if you're an American. Yeah, exactly. Because that's the exchange rate. Yeah. And that's the type of ticket where you get to walk on this nice paved walkway that they have, and it's roped off, and they have guards all over, and you're not allowed to cross over that rope and go in and into the actual stones themselves. So it's probably 40 feet from the stones. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, you can get some great pictures there. But from what I understand, because we did not do this ticket type, but from what I understand, it's very crowded. Mm-hmm. You often will be jostling people to, get a good view and a good photo. So now they have these other ticket types that you can do. And I feel like they don't widely publicize these because I had never heard of this until I saw an Instagram reel about it. But it's the Stone Circle experience, they call it. And for 61 pounds a person. So that's 3 times as much money almost, which is quite a bit more. But it was just the two of us. And for us, we felt like it was worth it. You go before they open or after they close. So either early in the morning or late in the evening. And you get to actually, with a small group of people, walk into the stones themselves. Yeah. And those tickets were completely sold out. But then what was going on was it was the equinox. Yeah. And they don't sell those tickets during the equinox because all the like spiritual stuff going on. I guess you can go to Stonehenge for free around the equinox, for right? 4 days, I think she said, the guide that we were with, for 4 days during the equinoxes and the solstices around those days. So it must be 2 plus or minus or something like that. Something like that, yeah. You can just go. Yeah. And they load people in and they still say, so she told us not to touch the stones. Yes. And they tell everybody not to touch the stones. During the equinox, they say don't touch the stones. Yeah. But actually, one of the people affiliated with the APN, she also has her own stuff, but she's going to be having a show coming out on the Archaeology Podcast Network, Natasha Bilson. Go look her up on Instagram. She actually, on her YouTube channel, went to that equinox, the one that right after we were there. A couple days after before we were there. Yeah. She was there filming, and people are literally leaning up against and sitting up against the stones. And this woman is like, they're a little like, they're not going anywhere. As long as you don't draw on them or do something. Most of the people are there for like this like whole spiritual experience. Right. They're not going to destroy them. So yeah. Yeah. But people are sticking like bundles of sage and stuff into like cracks in the stones, and they're pulling them out days later. Yeah. So they're not super crazy about don't touch them. Yeah. But don't touch them. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, during that time, you can just go there. But it's literally hundreds and hundreds of people. Hundreds of people. It's packed with people. Packed. So all of that came together to give us the most magical experience ever, because we went on the first day of the ticket sales. So that ticket sales opened back up again, right? We were the first group. So we were at 6:45 in the morning, which is very, very early. There was another group after us, but that wasn't available. So I bought us the 6:45 in the morning tickets, and there was only one other group of like 8 people, I think, 6 or 8 people. And all they did, well, we'll talk about them in a minute, but they were very much not in the way at all. So we kind of had the stones to ourselves. Yeah, and they were all together. They were all together, and they were doing like a chanting, singing thing. So it was amazing. It was like the stones were there just for us. Yeah. It was such a cool experience. And you can go watch our little video that we made on the APN. We did a little video. We did a Facebook Live. Yeah. Instagram Live. Instagram Live. Yeah, on ArchPodNet Instagram. So go check that out. Yeah. It was magical. So that little bit of extra money that we spent to do this really worked out for us. Wait, did you say the cost yet? Because it was actually kind of a lot of extra money. It was 61 pounds a person. A person, yeah. Yeah. So instead of the 25 that you would spend for the regular ticket a person. Yeah. So, like however many percentages more that is. Plus parking. If you don't buy a data plan for your phone, you're going to have to download the parking app, because guess what? They're not open when you get there. And you have to pay for parking, even though you've already spent all this money. I'm sure nobody would have checked it if we hadn't paid, but we went ahead and did. Super irritating. And so anyway, your mileage may vary, but these tickets really worked out for us. The group that was after us was much bigger than ours. Probably 2 or 3 times the size. Probably 30 or 40 people. Yeah. So you wouldn't have had such a lone stones experience. Right. We just got really lucky, and it was amazing. So let's get there first. Our drive from the Cotswolds. There is no It's in the middle
straight
of nowhere.
road to most places in England, we found out.
Once you get off the M's.
Yeah, but if you get off a road that starts with an M and you're on an A
or a B, God forbid.
Yeah. I don't even know what I don't think a B is paved, to be honest with you, if there even is a B. So,
we were on a couple B's, I think.
Yeah, we were the B's on those B's. But anyway, so if you get off an M and you're on an A, I mean, an A is going through little villages and towns. A lot of times it's one lane, which, okay, no big deal, right?
Sure.
That's fine. Also, I'm just going to warn you, if you've never driven in England before, the county, I'm just going to say county because I don't know what else to call it, but the county speed limit in general is 60 miles per hour. Now, that is a maximum speed limit.
You cannot drive that fast.
In the United States, that's generally the speed that people want you to drive at, right? It does say maximum speed on our signs, but in general, that's the speed you want to drive at, right?
Yeah.
That's the speed that is probably safe to drive at on our roads, right? In most cases, unless there's inclement weather. Not the case in England.
No.
Okay. Unless you're on an M.
I could not have imagined us driving that fast on any of those roads.
I mean, if the road opens up, you're fine. But if it's one lane and the hedges up next to the roads are so tall, you can't see around corners.
Right.
So you don't know there's other cars coming if it's one lane or if it's maybe 1.5 lanes with no lines in the middle. Like you don't even know. Right.
Yeah.
So when Maps says it's going to take 3 hours to get there, I think it said it was going to take 2 hours to get there. We had to leave super early. Or was it an hour and a half?
It was an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh,
I think.
okay. Well, I don't know. We did
I
so much
never would
driving.
have booked it. I would have waited till we were staying closer.
Well,
but I was like, an hour and 15 minutes. That's not so bad. We can do that.
Yeah, because we left at like 5, I think.
Yeah, but it ended up taking us like an hour and 40 minutes probably.
I'd already known at that point that it was going to take us an extra 20 minutes because whatever Maps said was based on 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, and if you're paying attention, I did say our ticket time was 6:45 in the morning, so you know what that means. It was dark. It was dark
when we left.
And for the first probably 2/3 of the time that we were driving, it was dark.
Yeah, it was dark. It was light when we got there because it wasn't daylight savings in England yet.
Yeah, true. Fortunately for you, there's not a lot of other cars on the road, so you didn't have to deal with that.
I kept the speed up probably more than I would have, but it was also foggy too.
It was foggy,
which was something. So I couldn't go as fast as I wanted to. You worry about animals and deer, and so we hardly saw any deer in England this whole time. It was an experience. It was interesting. I'm just going to say it's in the middle of nowhere. So if you're not, but there is a relatively big highway that goes literally right next to Stonehenge, which a few years ago, I think either that highway or maybe a new one they want to build was a big controversy because it was so close. Like if you want to just take a glimpse of Stonehenge, you really don't have to go get a ticket.
You don't have to buy a ticket. You can just drive by
a few times on the highway, turn around. I mean, you can see it from the road. So,
although I don't think they allow you to park on the road near it.
You can't park, but get somebody in a passenger seat and take a picture. I mean, it's not like it's buried off in a field somewhere.
It is kind of far away from the road. I mean, it's far enough that, and anyway, it's worth it to actually go in and see it, and just be mindful that the drive there could take you a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess that's what we learned.
Anyway, so the journey when we first got there, so we got on a bus because there's a little parking area up by Stonehenge, but the visitor center, you can't even see Stonehenge from the visitor center.
No.
Because it's over these rolling hills. So you take a little bus from the visitor center. It's 2 minutes.
Yeah.
By this bus.
Quick.
Yeah. And you take it to the end there.
You can walk there too after you go through if you want. But yeah.
Right. And then you take it up, and the visitor center is actually really nice and big. It wasn't really open like the gift shop was, but all the other exhibits and videos and stuff wasn't open. We had to wait.
The only bummer about this ticket is that we were so early and everything was closed, and we drove over to Woodhenge afterwards to try to kill some time.
Yeah.
And even going to Woodhenge and checking that out was still, we were so tired, and it was still another hour till it was going to open. So we just decided to hit the road and go back home because it had been a long weekend of sightseeing. So we were exhausted.
Yeah. We were pretty tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get off the bus and you walk over the hill, and you can immediately kind of see the tips of the stones, and it just kind of comes over the hill. And I think you and I were kind of in the front of the little pack there because we were in the front of the bus.
Yeah.
And it is indescribable seeing it come over the hill there.
It's just so unbelievably massive.
Mm-hmm.
And then because we were part of this special ticket, they just pull the rope aside and let you go into the stones, and of course ask you not to touch them, like you said. And then you're just standing right next to this gigantic sarsen stone that goes 20, 30 feet in the air or whatever. And it's just like such a magical experience.
Yeah.
I really can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah.
We got lucky because there weren't that many people there too. So that certainly helped. But
yeah, like we said, the group we were with, it was about 8 people or so, and they were all together. They were all either friends or at least acquaintances, and some of them were clearly friends. And it was kind of cool for us because the first, I don't know, we had about an hour, and the first like 30 minutes, they all just kind of did their own thing and, you know, sat and probably prayed and meditated and did whatever they were going to do. Then they kind of got together a little bit and did a little light drumming and chanting, a little singing and did some stuff, and near the end. And that was all fine. Yeah,
it was really nice. Whatever a couple of them had really lovely voices and they were singing, and then you can kind of hear the acoustics of the stones too, which may or may not have played a role in what they were using them for in the past. So to hear people singing was cool because, you know, I wasn't going to sing. Nope.
So some of our takeaways, I think we should talk about, because I think two of the things that still really kind of stick with me, because I mean, if you're interested in history, archaeology, even if you're not, you've probably seen 1,000 pictures of Stonehenge. It's just all over everything. I felt like I knew what I was going to see before I got there, but I was still struck by the immensity of the stones. The Sarsen stones. They're as tall as the RV we're in right now on its end. I mean, it is just they are just so tall. I just don't think I was prepared for the size. Yeah.
I mean, you know it, but you don't really know it until you stand next to them and really experience it.
Literally just standing right next to it.
Yeah.
It was just
I'll grab a couple of our photos and put them into the show notes for the episode. So definitely click into that. It'll be down in
we said this a couple times ago about something else we talked about was the British Museum. I am going to post on ArchPodNet Instagram today. So by the time you get this episode, you'll go check out our Instagram. Yeah. You'll see them.
Well, also
I'll send them to Tilly and she'll post them.
We did the live also. So that is on there and you can go see that now.
Yeah.
But we were there when the sun was coming up. Another benefit of being there at 6:45 in the morning. Yeah. The sun was up when we got there. It was light out, but it was not very high in the sky yet. So there was a couple moments where the sun was shining through the stones in just really like beautiful ways in that early morning sunlight. And it's yet another thing where you're like, well, this is freaking stunning. So maybe we're just looking at early ancient artists who were like, this will do beautiful things with the light, you know? So let's put some giant rocks here and do beautiful light things. I don't know. And it might've just been a benefit too, but yeah, we got some cool pictures with the sun coming up for sure.
I think one of the other things that struck me that I don't ever remember hearing about on any shows or anything we saw about Stonehenge in the past is the graffiti.
Yeah.
Almost every stone had etchings or carvings. I mean, some of it going back not that long, some of it going back hundreds and hundreds of years, you could tell. And some of it probably going back a lot further than that.
Yeah.
Was all over pretty much every surface that you could reach. And probably some that we couldn't even see that was higher up.
Yeah.
But it was all over the place, and it was just names. It was other words, things like that. Some of it was unintelligible.
One of them, I remember a date from the 1800s. I think we probably took a picture of it. Yeah. The graffiti was really cool. And obviously people be people, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to put your name on things. It's just what we do, I guess. So,
and along those lines, our guide mentioned that up until this was really donated to English Heritage about 100 years ago, I mean, people would come and just chip pieces off.
Chip us,
because they would either use it for their garden or they would. I mean, they knew there was significance, but there was no protection for it.
Yeah,
so they wanted a piece for their own. They would take whole stones. They would take things, and apparently, there's a story. That
it's
an
urban legend, as our guide said.
Yeah,
so
urban legends have a lot of truth to them sometimes.
Sometimes they do.
Well, there's a story that Sting, the singer, who lives nearby, apparently, or one of his houses is nearby, has one of the blue stones in his house.
Yeah.
Wasn't it one of the blue stones?
I think it was the blue stones because those are the smaller ones, although they're still freaking 6 feet tall. So they're cute. They're big, maybe even more than 6 feet tall. But yeah, that's still urban legend. And
I mean, it's not like he came and got one recently.
No.
It's just like through whatever, it's ended up at his house.
It wasn't protected the way it is now until the last 100 years. So there were blue stones that left the circle under various circumstances in the last hundreds of years. And apparently there's one there.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Urban legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But he's got a British Museum stance on it. So. So, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, there's that. So I think the other thing that really struck me too, and that I didn't know, or maybe I just don't remember learning about it, but there are burial mounds in a circle all the way around Stonehenge. And some of them are closer and some are further away. And from what our guide was telling us, it seems like the people wanted to be buried within, or people wanted their loved ones actually to be buried within sight of Stonehenge, probably because it was a place of some kind of significance or importance, maybe to afterlife or whatever ritual importance. And so there are these burial mounds and you can just see them ringing the entire monument, which was so cool. Yeah. I really enjoyed seeing that. And they're so funny too, because like there's farms all around and it kind of just looks like the farmers just sort of like plow around these mounds and like leave the mounds alone. And yeah, so it's an interesting little piece of like geography in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those.
All right. Well, yeah, after our time was up, we took a few pictures.
Yeah.
We tried to get our guide to take a picture of us, but Rachel handed the guide the phone and it was on video and she didn't realize that. So we have a couple of 1-second videos of us standing in front of the stones, which is nice. Yeah.
Maybe those are actually kind of good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So anyway, it's
boy, boomers.
Yeah. But so yeah, after that, we did go over to Woodhenge, which I just want to say something really quick about Woodhenge, and then we're going to have a fun little segment more about Stonehenge in the segment 3. But Woodhenge is, and again, I'd heard about Woodhenge before, but it came back into our minds.
Because of Time Bandits.
Because of Time Bandits, the reboot of Time Bandits.
Which we reviewed last year. You can go listen to that episode.
Yeah.
But
because episode 1 starts in Woodhenge with this kid who's really a history fanatic and he's an archaeology fanatic. And he gets to on his birthday, his parents will take him wherever he wants to go. And they're standing in the middle of Woodhenge.
Which like is so unimpressive to especially people when they don't have the like knowledge or understanding of what it is.
Especially, I didn't know how close Woodhenge was to Stonehenge.
Very close.
And the fact that they open it up in Woodhenge, knowing Stonehenge is literally 5 minutes away.
It's so funny. It just, it was just like the perfect joke for that, that plot line in the show. Yeah.
But keep in mind, Woodhenge too, you have to really visualize Woodhenge because there's nothing there.
Right.
They put these, a while back, a woman actually who was part of the excavation here.
Ago, right?
She did this a long time ago. I don't remember her name, but she put up these concrete posts where the wooden poles, lodge poles almost would have been.
Right.
That would have been Woodhenge at the time, because when they did this excavation, they realized they found these like post holes, because you can tell a post hole archaeologically, and they can tell the width, which probably gives them some sense of, height, and, you can see the depth, and how you can do a lot of calculations on how tall something probably would have been by how deep it was buried and things like that. So they had an estimate of what this thing probably would have looked like at its glory days.
Kind of. But the thing is that
it's a lot of estimate.
The posts are all these stubby little things that are like 2 or 3 feet high, right?
Well, they didn't want to put up 30-foot concrete pillars. That would have been cool if they did, but they didn't.
They didn't. It was 100 years ago, so like probably weren't.
And the thing is,
a good idea. But
the thing is, I feel like what she put up is now almost a heritage site.
Yeah, right.
And they don't want to take down the concrete pillars to put up something a little more substantial to give you an impression of Woodhenge. But I feel like they really should.
Yeah, it's like it's both really cool to see the like concentric rings.
Yeah.
In a circle, and then I think in the middle they found like a child burial or something too, right?
Yeah.
So all of that is nicely arranged with these concrete pillars, but you lose the sense of size and proportion because they're like short. Right. So I have kind of mixed feelings about it, but still a really cool site.
Well, on the other side, let's talk about some ongoing research, a little bit more about the wider landscape, just briefly on Stonehenge. Let's also read some 1-star reviews across the internet about Stonehenge. I'll just end with one here. Solid stones. Nobody really knows why they're there. Pagans get naked there occasionally, but it causes lots of traffic jams. Don't recommend unless you're a tourist. Then your probs enjoy it. Back in a minute.
It's legit.
Welcome back to the Archaeology Show, episode 302. All about Stonehenge.
All about it.
All right. So let's talk about the landscape just briefly, because it's not just about Stonehenge. Obviously, the area was important for some reason. Otherwise, they wouldn't have chosen this spot.
Yeah.
Now, Stonehenge itself is built on, I would say, a little bit of a rise. It is a rolling hills landscape.
It is, yeah.
You don't often build stuff down in the bottoms or the lower parts of an area,
unless you're trying to be protected from wind or the elements of in some way. But that's not what the point of this was. So
you can see a lot of the surrounding countryside from Stonehenge. I wouldn't say it's the highest point by any means, but it's definitely a high point, right?
For sure. And like we've been talking about, Stonehenge, well, number one, Stonehenge isn't isolated. Yeah. It's part of a complex network of other things like Woodhenge, which we talked about. Durrington Walls is another one, and then numerous burial mounds, which we also talked about. And that is part of like this wider like ritual and ceremonial landscape potentially. Yeah. But also it's not the only henge too. Like we said, there's many of them. So we went to stone circles in Scotland, remember? Yeah. So they're not on the same scale. They're not as big, but same idea, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
Except you can time travel through those.
I know.
Stonehenge, I
tried to in Scotland, but I guess I just don't have the Claire magic to make it through.
Pretty sure that's why they won't let you touch this one. The time travel is too dangerous.
I see.
Yep. That's probably.
Did you break the rules and touch one of the stones?
I didn't.
I didn't either.
I felt like she was watching me the whole time.
So she was not. Yeah. She was the nicest guide, nicest lady. I saw one of the other guys touch the stone.
Oh, really?
And like the like rules follower inside of me wanted to be like, don't touch the stones, but I didn't do it.
Just like come up behind him. What are you doing?
You're not allowed to do that. I didn't do that though.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So it's not like just because Stonehenge is, it's not like we had to discover it.
Yeah.
Everyone's known about it forever.
Right.
Like it was always in people's minds.
Yeah. Even the ones who were building it, like maybe their grandparents built it, but they always probably heard stories about grandpa moving the big stones. So, I don't
know about that. But anyway, so archaeologists are obviously still actively doing some excavations around the site, analyzing its surroundings, analyzing the stones, trying to discover new clues to their origins and purposes and things like that. So there's constant ongoing research.
Yeah, that's why we just are finding out the origins of some of these stones, is because I think that was research that people hadn't thought to do before, maybe, or maybe the technology wasn't there before, but just now finding out that some of the stones are from Wales, one's from Scotland, like that's just crazy.
Wasn't one of the earliest theories about Stonehenge was that Merlin, the magician, floated them over from Ireland or something?
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. Like that was one of the prevailing theories, I think, for a really long time.
Right. Yeah.
We've come a long way.
I don't know if prevailing theory is maybe.
Well, not by scientists. But that was like what people thought. So, Anyway, precise dating techniques are constantly refining our understanding of the construction timeline, of course, because we always are learning new dating techniques and things like that. So,
for sure.
Yeah. The composition of the stones themselves will help us understand their origin and where they came from and things like that. That's one of the ways we found out where the bluestones came from.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I am a little obsessed with this idea that like people were showing up, like this was a community effort and people were for some kind of community purpose coming there with like their best example of a really awesome stone. Some way to contribute a piece of their local geography to this really important place, which we still don't know why it was so important, but it was. And to know that maybe somebody came from Scotland with a gigantic stone to be like, hi, here we are. We're from Scotland. It's like, I love that idea, even if it's not necessarily the most probable way, but I think it's a really cool thing to think about.
Yeah, some of the other cool things they're doing, because it's not all about artifacts every time, and it's not just about the stones themselves, but it's about the environment. Studying pollen and other environmental evidence will help understand the landscape around Stonehenge and understand the lives of the people who live there. It really is called landscape archaeology.
Yeah.
And understanding more about the people who lived and worked on that land. So
yeah, I feel like the environment recently in the last couple decades has started to become really important to researchers. Yeah. And researchers are learning that they can learn so much about the people by understanding the environment that they lived in. And pollen, of course, is a big way to do that. And whatever other, environmental landscape type studies they're doing, I'm sure are helping fill in that picture. So yeah, totally.
Well, while Stonehenge does continue to inspire awe in most people who see it and generate new questions among the scientific community. Not everyone is inspired by Stonehenge. And while we were doing some of this research and just looking around and seeing things, we use Google and we use Yelp and we use other things and TripAdvisor and things like that. We noticed some negative reviews.
I know.
And we thought that it would be kind of fun to just read some of the 1-star reviews about Stonehenge.
Well, these do give you an insight into like what the experience is like and whether or not maybe this experience is not for you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to read a few from, we won't talk about where they came from. We'll just read them. Yeah. We're not giving anybody's names away or anything like that.
No.
Although these are out there.
Not important.
Yeah, here's one. I have been there during the week. We paid the entrance. However, it was not worth it. You better walk. I think she means you're better off walking. But anyway, we thought the stones were really huge, but their heights is less than 2 meters. Not worth it. Waste of money. 1 star.
I love this one. Boring place, spelled Booring. Boring place. The most boring place where I was. Will never come back. Will not recommend this place. You can see rocks in your garden for free.
Wow. Oh my God. This was a month ago. This person was possibly there when we were there. People keep saying Stonehenge is a beautiful, awe-inspiring destination, but I didn't see paying $700 each for 5 people just to see a bunch of rocks. If I could put 0 stars, I would.
Oh my God.
I don't know what they're including $700 in. Maybe travel.
Maybe travel, yeah.
Maybe it's not in a different the right currency I recognize. I don't know, who knows. A lot of these reviews actually talk about the cost. And
most of these are. I'm kind of scrolling through and they're all, everybody's so mad about how much it costs.
One of them actually, one of these Google reviews actually had some information that probably needs to be fact checked, but he says that Cecil Chubb donated the Stonehenge site to the nation in 1918 on condition that the public should always have free access on payment of a fee not exceeding 1 shilling, which is 5 pence in modern money. Basically, it's like 5 cents in US dollars. If you were to equate pounds per dollar, it's now $28.50 standard ticket and $70 to get the actual inside the circle. He says £70. The Thatcher government closed off the stones 40 years ago. That's what he says. Wow. Don't go there. It's a sacred site desecrated by commercialism and authoritarian mentality.
Well, I mean, they have to keep it running. So
the visitor center and the guards out front and everything else, none of that's free. And some people think that the government should just pay for all that and then still not charge you to show up there. Yeah. It should be paid for by taxes, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, this is another one about the cost. And I do understand this. Outrageously expensive for what you get. Got there to find what cost 4 of us £120 to see the stones you can see for free from the road. Drove off again at least 3 times the cost it should be. Yeah. I mean, I guess I get it. Yeah.
This one person was complaining about the long lines at the bus because you don't have to take the bus. You can walk down the road. And they said, taking the bus seemed impossible due to the massive queues. It was exhausting. We decided to walk instead. The way among the fields was nice, full of cow pies, a complete disappointment.
Okay, this review is annoying. Big bits of stone in an old field. Yes, they're old, and yes, it might hold your interest for a few seconds or two, wondering how they did it all those years ago. Until you realize that the same time 2,000 miles ago, the Great Pyramids were being built. Okay. Yeah. So we've done some timelines episodes where we look at what is happening around the world at the same time in different places. And it's such an unfair comparison to say that because one was doing one thing over here and this one was doing this totally different thing over here. It's like comparing apples and oranges. It's a completely unfair comparison. So this review sucks. Sorry, you suck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another one here. Absolute waste of time and money. It's just a few stones placed randomly together. Didn't even see the shape initially, right?
Yeah.
This is why you probably need to go into the visitor center first and learn something about it.
Learn about it a little bit.
Buy the guide.
Yeah.
Says here, placed randomly together, nothing else. More shocking is that it's a wonder of the world. My God. And then 4 slapping face on head emojis.
So I keep reading reviews about varying costs and how much it costs. All these reviews, everybody's mad about how much it costs. Okay, fine. I get that. But this person says that they're 44 pounds each. Now, they do cost different things in high time. Like we were there in like a shoulder season, so we had the lowest price tickets. But please do keep in mind that if you buy the tickets online, you get like a 15 or 20% discount. So just buy your ticket online ahead of time. Buy your ticket in the parking lot. I think you can do that. Don't go buy it at the ticket counter because you have that immediate 15% added onto it. Again, people just not being informed and not doing any research ahead of time and then coming onto these websites and leaving bad reviews. Yeah. You at least could have gotten a little bit of a discount. Come on.
Well, this person says complete ripoff, vastly overpriced just to see historical Lego bricks that requires no upkeep or maintenance for something that nobody has a clue about their history.
Oh, God. Okay, we should stop. This is terrible.
This guy said he looked up the price and he said for 2 adults and 3 kids, well over 100 pounds. Really? He's like, everyone was more than happy for me to drive along the A303 where you can see them very clearly from the road and for free. Kids happy we didn't spend that kind of money on something so useless and stop for a real nice pub lunch instead.
Oh my God. It's like, it's your heritage. That's like, oh man. It's just so hard to explain to people who don't have an interest in history how important it really is and was and why you should know about it.
I think we should read 1-star reviews about most things that we say.
We probably should.
We are gearing up for a lot of Alaska and British Columbia and Yukon Territory things, possibly.
Yeah.
Because we're driving to Alaska in an RV this summer.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a lot of stuff. Because there's just, half of Alaska's national parks.
Like we're not trying to make this show a travel show, but we do travel. And what that allows us to do is go experience the archaeology and the history of all these places along the way. We've talked about this before. So
I can't wait to read the 1-star reviews.
Of like national parks in Alaska or something.
Yeah. And since we are planning this out and we're planning it with another couple, the trip. So we, unlike a lot of our shows, which are planned,
minutes ahead of time?
Well in advance of recording. No. 10
to 15 minutes before we start recording.
I wouldn't say it's that bad.
No, it's not.
But these are going to be planned quite a ways in advance. So we're going to know, quite ahead of time.
Yeah.
So, at least a show before that, we'll know what we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. So it would be fun to read maybe the 1-star reviews before we go visit the thing.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have to do that.
Yeah. So.
And for all of you guys out there, I know we have a lot of Canadian listeners. Obviously we learned that.
Yes.
And people who live in Alaska and people who have done this trip. So we're going to be taking the Alcan through Canada and then up into Alaska. So if you guys have favorite spots for experiencing a cool archaeological site or historical experience or whatever along that route, then let us know. Yeah. We'd love to go somewhere that somebody else recommends. All right. That's about it for Stonehenge. I'm sure there will be another news article about Stonehenge shortly because there's no shortage of research. So, however, next week, no articles about Stonehenge, but we do have some other cool news articles coming up. Yep. Back to the news. All right. See you then. Bye. Thanks for listening to The Archaeology Show. Feel free to comment and view the show notes on the website at www.archpodnet.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ArchPodNet. Music for this show is called I Wish You Would Look from the band Sea Hero. Again, thanks for listening and have an awesome day. The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Culturo Media and DigTech LLC. This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.